So you're explaining to a friend that you're going to start an in-depth Bible study on the book of Genesis, and he or she recommends a commentary for you. So you rush home and jump on Amazon and buy that commentary right away. And you even pay for express shipping so you can get it as soon as possible. And once the commentary arrives, you start reading it, and one of several things occurs to you. Maybe you discover that the commentary is simply a series of devotionals that provides really no in-depth analysis on how to correctly interpret the book of Genesis. Or maybe the scholar spends most of his or her time discussing historical and theological approaches to all the passages in the book of Genesis, but again, doesn't provide any analysis on correct interpretation of those passages. And then lastly, and maybe worst of all, you discover that the scholar thinks that the book of Genesis is full of myths, and he spends most of his time discussing potential sources for the book of Genesis as he deals with each passage. And then it dawns on you. You've wasted a lot of good time and money, and you're beginning to wonder, what are commentaries and who gets to write them? Well, let's discuss it. Be right back. Hey, thanks for sticking around. This is AskABibleProf.com, where we give straightforward answers to your questions about the Bible and Christianity. If you find this video helpful, then consider hitting like and subscribing, and we can introduce you to other helpful videos. In this video, we're discussing commentaries and who gets to write them. You know, commentaries can be kind of pricey. They can cost anywhere from $25 to $75, and you really don't want to spend that kind of money and not get your questions answered or grow in your understanding of God's Word. So in this video, we're going to give some introductory explanations about commentaries and who gets to write them and what you should expect from them. So with that in mind, let's get started. So the first thing you should know is that anybody could write a commentary. Matter of fact, a lot of commentaries are written by popular pastors, and they're written by pastors because publishers know that they can make a lot of money off commentaries written by these pastors simply because they're popular. So, you need to really be thinking about, who it is that's authoring this commentary you're considering buying. And you really should do a little investigation into their academic background. Because the reality is, when a pastor writes a commentary, they can write just about anything they want, and they may not even necessarily be interacting with scholarship about the things they're writing in their commentary. Now, some do and some don't, but a lot of times you're not even aware of the scholarship they're relying upon, or if they're even relying upon scholarship as they write their commentary. So when you're dealing with a commentary that's written by a popular pastor, it's really buyer beware. So let me be clear. I'm not saying pastors can't write good commentaries, but the fact of the matter is, they're not biblical scholars. They're not experts in the field of biblical studies. So if you're wanting a good, in-depth, critical commentary or scholarly commentary, then you probably want to avoid commentaries that are written by popular pastors. The reason I suggest that you do a little background investigation into the academic credentials of the author of the commentary you're considering purchasing is that just because somebody is referred to as Dr. Smith or Dr. Jones doesn't mean they're an expert in the field of biblical studies. Some people have a doctorate of ministry. In other words, they've done adequate research into how to do ministry. That means they're not an expert in the field of biblical studies. They're an expert on how to do certain types of ministries. And that doctorate is referred to as a D-Min. Another doctorate that some people may have earned is an EDD, and that refers to a doctorate of education. And what that means is that person has done research into institutional management and leadership. So they may have researched how to run a university. Again, they have a doctorate, but their doctorate is not in the field of biblical studies. And so sometimes people with D-Mins or EDDs get to write commentaries, but they're not qualified scholars in biblical studies. And finally, some commentaries are written by actual biblical scholars who have earned PhDs in the field of biblical studies, but they're not written by believers or they're not written by conservative evangelical scholars. So you need to do a little investigation into their academic background and find out where they earned their PhD, and more importantly, where they're currently teaching. Because if they're teaching at a state university or a very liberal seminary or divinity school, then you're probably not going to want to purchase commentaries written by them. Because the sad fact of the matter is this: liberal universities and divinity schools and seminaries claim to be all about diversity, but one thing they will not tolerate is conservative evangelicals. And so schools like Harvard and Princeton and Yale have pretty much blacklisted evangelical scholars, and they just won't hire them. So you need to be aware of that. Just because somebody has earned a PhD in biblical studies doesn't mean they're interested in promoting the truth about Jesus Christ or defending the veracity of the scriptures. And so you need to keep that in mind, and you probably want to avoid commentaries written by these scholars. So the second rule is never expect to agree with everything you read in a commentary. I tell my students that if you want a commentary to affirm everything that you believe, then write your own commentary, but expect to learn nothing. It's just an unrealistic expectation to think that a commentary is going to affirm and agree with everything you believe. So don't have that expectation going in. It's just not realistic. And the third rule is related to the second rule, which is scholars, just like you and me, are fallible human beings, and sometimes they're just flat wrong. The only divinely inspired book is the Bible. Commentaries are not divinely inspired, and sometimes authors promote things that are just clearly wrong. And, sometimes we have this attitude that, well, if something's published in a book, then it must be right. And regrettably, some of us have this attitude towards the web. If something's on the web, it must be the gospel. Well, that's just not true. And occasionally you'll buy a commentary where the author writes something that's just wrong. So when that happens, don't be surprised. Just ignore it and move on, because the reality is scholars like you and I are completely fallible, and sometimes they'll write things that are inaccurate or even wrong. And fourth, avoid single author commentary series on the entire Bible. The reality is, no one's an expert on every book in the Bible. The fact of the matter is, even those authors are relying upon other scholars as they write their series on the entire Bible. So you really shouldn't depend upon a single person for your theological development. So therefore, avoid single author commentary series on the entire Bible. And Rule 5 is very similar, which is never stick to a single commentary series for the entire Bible. The reality is there are several very good commentary series. And within each of these series, there are some really good commentaries, and then there are some that are not so good. So you should, or at least I'm of the opinion, you should cherry pick the best commentaries from each series. And that way you guarantee yourself you're getting the best scholarship available. Because if you rely upon a single commentary series for your entire library, then you're getting some good commentaries, but you're also guaranteeing that you're getting a few that are really not so good. And I know some people like the color scheme of a single commentary series. They're kind of obsessive compulsive and neurotic about having everything in order. Well, you really shouldn't do that, because if you do that, then you're not always getting the best of every book in the Bible. So I'm of the opinion, cherry pick the best commentaries from each of the commentary series. The sixth rule is old is not always bad and new is not always better. Just because a commentary has been written in the last 10 years doesn't mean it's a better commentary. I have commentaries that are 30 or 40 years old, and I have other commentaries that are written by scholars that are no longer alive. And I can tell you, they run rings around some of the current scholarship. So just because something has been recently published doesn't mean it's a better commentary. So just remember, old is not always bad and new is not always better. So that's a brief explanation about who can write a commentary and what you should expect from them. Let me close by giving you a little advice about how to save some money when buying a commentary. When you decide that you need to buy a commentary, you should first look into buying a used commentary. Sometimes you can find an excellent commentary in used condition and it will sell for as much as half off the full retail price. So when you begin to shop for your commentary, first go on eBay or surf the web for some used bookstores and see if you can't find the commentary you're looking for. Yeah, it'll have a little shelf wear and maybe be dinged up on the edges, but think of yourself as rescuing it from neglect, or that you're being a good steward of the earth and saving some trees. Just know that hardly ever do you have to pay full retail price for a commentary. Now, if you can find the commentary that you're looking for at a deep discount, then by all means, buy the new commentary. But just know this is not a book that you're going to be reading every day, so you should do yourself a favor and save a little money, and you can best do that by buying a used commentary. If you found this video helpful or interesting, then consider hitting like and subscribing and joining our community. I'm Dr. Monty Shanks for AskABibleProf.com. Thanks for watching, and God bless.